Hello, everybody, and thanks a million for joining us at today's Peninsula Ireland webinar. My name is Luke Byrne. I am one of the business sales partners here in Peninsula, and essentially what my job is to reach out to people like yourselves, let you know what we do, who we are, how we support businesses like yourself. We have a range of different support options available here at Peninsula. We offer documentation reviews, 24-hour advice, tribunal support, litigation support. And also we have some fantastic software here that thousands of people find very beneficial. Today's webinar is based around the HSA inspections, something that I discuss with people nearly every day. We're joined by our health and safety expert and consultant, Denise Cooper, who is going to run us through what to expect from a HSA inspection, who are the HSA, questions asked by the HSA, and consequences of failure to comply with health and safety law. There'll be a couple of polls throughout. There'll be questions and answers at the end. But for now, I'm going to hand you over to Denise, and she is going to set us on our way. So, Denise.
Thank you very much, Luke. So, first, who is this Health and Safety Authority? So, the Health and Safety Authority, the HSA, have the overall responsibility for the administration and enforcement of health and safety and work in Ireland. So they monitor compliance with legislation in the workplace, and they can take enforcement actions up to and including prosecutions. And the authority will be visiting small, medium, large size businesses, self-employed, voluntary organisations, so any place where work activities happen. As you can see through there, we have different segments that they cover. They come out on sporadic visits. They could arrive at your workplace at any time, or they may inform you that they're arriving at your workplace. But we're going to take a quick poll just to get the minds working on how many HSA inspections do you believe were conducted in 2022?
You mentioned there, Denise, well, first of all, look, our options are 3,598, 8,563 and 10,509. Denise, you mentioned there a couple of ways that they can kind of arrive at the business. You might know, it might be random. Do they do it sectorally as well, or like do they do it geographically? What's the most common form, or is there one?
There is no most common form, because what happens is at the end of the year, every January, you'll get a report, and the report will come out and they'll tell you what sectors that they have looked at. Now, there is a repeat that would happen every year. So say, for example, from May until about August, they always will focus on the farming sector. So they will, coming into Christmas, they will look at the retail sector, and the beauty industry also, because that is very high and moving. And then depending upon what is maybe changing within the European Union, or they have a particular focus of something that may be happening that they may decide to look at. For example, the end of the year, they will be looking at the likes of anything to do with healthcare and HICWA.
Okay, very good. So from the answers in the poll, 11% reckon 3,500. 53% reckon 8,500 and 37% reckon 10,500. I think we'll see on the next slide, Denise, what the answer was, and there we go, 10,500.
Well done to that 53%. So yeah, 10,500 visits happened. 16 prosecutions were concluded, resulting in fines. Also, just a little bit of information from June, July and August, there was actual criminal prosecutions, resulting in business owners receiving, one business received a 6-month suspended sentence, and another business where an employee received a 6-month prison sentence for not complying with work relation and health and safety.
Because I think a lot of people forget, Denise, that health and safety can be criminally prosecuted as well. So it's extremely important to keep on top of stuff like this.
You're absolutely correct, Luke, because what a lot of businesses believe is that they have their public liability insurance, so their insurance is going to cover them. If you are prosecuted by the HSA, that is a criminal prosecution. There's not an insurance company in the land that will cover that. You must take that fine yourself. And also because of sector section 80, senior managers and directors responsibilities, meaning that senior managers directors of a business and people who are in control of a business can be prosecuted as well as receive criminal convictions.
And that means then, Denise, they can't hold a directorship of a company again. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, that is a criminal prosecution held with them forevermore and amen. So unfortunately. So look, the sectors that the HSE covers, believe me that this list is non-exhaustible, so it is, but the high risk sectors would be agricultural, construction, health and social care, transport and storage. Now, as I said, this is not an exhaustible list. The HSE cover small, medium, large businesses, people who maybe have only one employee. There are businesses who have no employees. So the authority will carry out inspections on every business, because every business has to have a Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act written within their safety statement or policy, as well as businesses that deal with the Chemical Legislation Act and any other legislation that may be relevant. Their job is to regulate and enforce the law that will keep people safe, healthy, and the welfare at work. They visit thousands of work locations every year as part of their remit, and this is to regulate and promote safety, health and welfare of people at work and those affected by it. So that's third parties that may enter your premises, and to regulate and promote safe manufacturing, use, placing on the market, trade and transport of chemicals. So there is a wide variety that they would look at. So if we move on, what would you expect from a HSE inspection? So if an inspector came into your premises, basically what they want to do is speak to the person in charge. So they may not necessarily ask for the managing director. They may want to speak to the manager in charge of that day. They will want to speak to employees. They will want to take information down. But the first thing that they will ask you for is, have you got a safety statement or have you got a safety policy? By not being able to demonstrate health and safety, by not being able to talk through health and safety, you are kind of leaving yourself wide open, because as we know, the Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act is a statutory obligation. So if there was something wrong, so the inspectors are there to give advice. It's either going to be verbally or written. They're going to do an audit on your premises and maybe give suggestions about improvements on health and safety within your workplace. They may take action if they find that you're breaking the law. And first of all, by not having safety statements, which is section 20 of the law, and not having risk assessments, which is section 19, you have effectively now broken the law. So this is whenever the likes of certain prosecutions can happen. So they can either give a report of inspection setting out areas for improvement and advice about health and safety at work. They can give you an improvement notice or a contravene notice for breach of legislation, giving you a period in which to make improvements. The general rule is that the improvements are, you have 20 days in which to pay the fines and you have 30 days in which to get your house in order. Or they can give you what's called a prohibition notice, where there is a risk of serious personal injury, which will stop you doing something until you have made it safe or continue to make safe. So they can shut down your business or they can shut down part of your business until you have proven that you've made it safe and you have paid your prosecution fees. What I would say all to this is the maximum penalties that would be held with a prosecution is up to 3 million and or 2 years imprisonment. So there is quite a high focus being put on health and safety. And this is for every business. When we talk about serious and personal injury, that's as simple as not having a fire evacuation plan. So have you got your fire evacuation plan and your people being controlled? Then we will move forward. So what is assessed by an inspector during the workplace? So the inspector has the powers to enter your business. They do not have to be invited to be entering your business. There has recently been a fine set out by a company who did not allow an inspector to enter their premises, and that was $3,500. That was the first fine that was sent out, and because it was taken to courts, it was a criminal prosecution. So I consider I call them like vampires. Once you invite them in, they're in, but you cannot effectively stop them from coming in. But when they enter your premises, they're there to inquire, to search, examine, and inspect a place of work. They are there to obtain information from employers and employees. They may not want to speak directly to the director or control. They may ask to go and speak directly to the employees. They can interview employers and employees about work activity, which leads to an accident. They have higher power than the guards, believe it or not. They take witness statements when undertaking their investigations, require production of records to make and retain copies of these records. So it's not protected by GDPR. They can obtain any records that they believe will make a case or investigation. They can test, examine any articles or substance at the workplace and to remove or retain if necessary. They can take CCTV footage. They can take part of machinery. We have seen them walk out with many an article more than just a piece of paper. They also can take samples within the workplace depending upon what or why they're there to investigate. They can do spot checks. So they may just arrive on your premises and decide to do spot checks, at which point they will inform you if a further investigation is going to happen. So the biggest thing that we talk about is the safety statement, because Section 20 of the Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act is every business is obliged by law to have a safety statement or safety policy in place. So the safety statement is the implementation. It is the key to the success of health and safety and management in the workplace. The inspector will need to see clear evidence of this, and to promptly implement the safety statement, employers must put in place the safety and health management system which suits its needs but gets the job done. The safety statement may need to cover an employer's responsibilities for several workplaces or many work locations under its control, and the means for doing this will need to be clearly set out. So you could have one businesses, but many locations. The safety statement would reflect the many locations, but it has to take into account that the risks and hazards could be different in those locations. So it means it's bespoke to your business. It has to properly reflect your business and be bespoke. The system must ensure that everyone in the workplace or those doing the work activities, if done in several locations, know what is expected of them with regards to employee safety, health and work. This comes from the CEO right down to the frontline workers. All staff need to know the health and safety rules they must follow in their workplace, the ones which the employer must follow to comply with the safety health laws which apply to their workplace. In discussing with the safety statement, what if I had no employees? You still have a duty of care towards any person who enters your premises. So that could be third parties that are entering your premises, customers that are coming into play. You could be a business, say a small barbers that maybe rent space. So you have rent-a-chairs. There is exchange of money. Those people who now do the rent-a-chair have exchanged money with you. They've effectively become your employee. So they are now persons that would be within the workforce. And now that means if you have more than, say, 3 or more of them, you would need to have a safety statement in place. If it was less than that, it would be a safety policy. Now, one thing that is written in law is a safety policy does not necessarily need to be in a written format. However, Section 83, where the onus of proof lies on the person to prove that they have the safety policy and safety statement in place, it is always advised to have it written down, because if you don't have it written down, it never happened, you have nothing to prove, and if an accident were to happen, you have no evidence to show that you have complied with law. So we always say you must have it written down, because then it never effectively took place. So what do you need to do now? So businesses would need to look at the size of business they are, the nature of the business that they are, and look at whether they require a safety policy or a safety statement. Do they have a duty of care towards third party? They may not think that they're open to the public, but you could have a contractor that comes in who maybe does pat testing on your electrical equipment. You have a duty of care towards them. They're now a third party that has entered your business, so they have. If you work with members of the public to keep your public liability insurance valid, you must have a safety statement, because there probably more than likely was a section when you took out that policy that talked about statutory obligations, and that was in reference to the Safety, Health and Welfare Work Act. You must be able to prove that you've communicated with your employees any changes that are introduced and any documents agreed and accepted with compliance. Health and safety is always a two-way conversation. It is policies, procedures that are maybe set down from the risk assessment, which is operational and business controls. But you have to have a competent person within your business. You have to have a safety representative who is there to be able to speak to, one, the employees for any directions that may come from, say, the manager down along the lines of command, or it could be any concerns that the employees may have about something that is being put into play. But it must always be a two-way conversation. And then review and revise current policies, training procedures, and record in a timely manner. Again, as we say, if it's not written down, it never happened. You could be blue in the face talking to somebody about health and safety. They go, they have an accident or incident. The HSA get involved because, believe it or not, if the HSA get involved, it could be a disgruntled employee has reported you. It could be a competitor has reported you. Believe me, they do that. It could be that they're in the sector and they have decided to just choose that area. They could be in the location. You could be in the service industry and a HSA inspector could be one of your customers. So for whatever reasons, they could be out. But as I said, you could be blue in the face talking to somebody about something that they have maybe done wrong. But if an accident happens and you cannot prove that that conversation has happened, you do not have your policies in place, and you have not informed, trained and instructed, then unfortunately you would be what I would say a sitting duck. So we have a quick poll. I'll let you read out the questions there quickly, Luke, if that's okay.
Absolutely, Denise. So how often should I update my health and safety statement or policy? We have every 3 years, every 2 years, or yearly. I think, Denise, this will obviously depend maybe on a couple of factors, depending on different risk factors, the industry, staff numbers, and stuff like that. Should certain industry update them more frequently than others?
Okay, so basically what is required by law. So as I said, once you have 3 or more employees, it's a safety statement. Once you've less than 3 people who work within the business, sorry, I do call them employees, and the reason being is if you have rent shares, if you have subcontractors, if you have voluntary people in your business, they are considered employees under health and safety. So when I use that term, that's what I mean.
Okay.
So once you have 3 or more, it's a safety statement. Once you have less, it's a safety policy. However, if you are dealing with chemicals and you are required by law to discuss the Chemical Legislation Act, and this would be, say, for example, we take a mechanics. So a mechanics may only have one person who works for them. Would they require a safety policy or a statement? Well, it would be a statement, because under the Chemical Legislation Act, you're required to have a statement in place, meaning they should, although under the threshold of 3, they are required to go a lot more in depth and discuss a lot more. Believe it or not, when we talk about chemicals, we're talking about the good old domestos that sits underneath the kitchen sink, because once that's been used in a business environment, that is now considered a chemical at work. So it is. So yes, the rule of thumb would be, as I discussed there, but also how often should you update it? Well, at a minimum on a yearly basis.
And that's what 86% of the attendees said today. So 86% have gotten it right with yearly. We have 14% every 2 years, and 0% said 3 years. So fairly kind of up to date with that. I think, Denise, mechanics and tire centres and garages are a great example, because I was dealing with a crash repair centre not too long ago, and they had a HSA inspection. It was just completely random. and they asked for an up-to-date health and safety statement, even though it was just a father and son business. And like what you said there is perfectly apt, because they're dealing with higher risk, they're dealing with chemicals, they're dealing with machinery, so they're going to have more of an obligation to ensure the health and safety there. So that's just a
That's
prime example of
absolutely.
how it varies from business to business. I think if we pop on to the next slide, Denise, we have just a few of the upcoming virtual events that are happening over the next few weeks. And the first one is on Wednesday, the 15th, again at 10 a.m. And that is what to do when an employee lodges a WRC claim against you and your small business. So this is something that we're hearing a lot of lately. The WRC are also out doing their on-site kind of random inspections as well. We're hearing a lot of people getting them. So if you've had one, if you've had one in the past, if it's something that you're kind of worried or concerned about, that'll be a very good webinar to attend next week. Then on the 22nd of November at 10 a.m. we have top tips on managing your employees' new work-life balance rights. So that's legislation that has passed or that was updated recently enough over the last couple of months, and it's something that changes quite frequently as well. Employment law here in Ireland changes like the wind. It can be quite difficult to keep on top of stuff like this, so that'll be another very good webinar to attend on the 22nd. And then on the 22nd as well, we're throwing webinars at you on the 22nd. It's protect your staff, how to manage violence and aggression in the workplace. So that's at 2 p.m. Denise, if you don't mind, we have some questions that was submitted as well
Yeah.
over the last while. So I'll just throw a few of them at you as well to get your thoughts. So the first one, what to do when an inspector calls?
Okay, so when an inspector calls, the first thing to do is make sure that you know where the safety statement or safety policy is. Whoever is in charge of that day. So I had a prime example where, again, we're going for garages, but the manager was out seeing us and they received a phone call to say that the inspector had called in. Know where the safety policy is, know how to be able to discuss the safety system. And when I say safety system, having policies and procedures and risk assessments is what is required to have. But the law clearly states you have to have a safe system of working, meaning you have to audit these documents throughout the course of the year. And that's why it says at a minimum, the safety statement would be updated on a yearly basis, because it would
Okay.
mean that you have not audited throughout the course of the year through the risk assessments. So the person in charge must be able to discuss this with them, must know where it is, or if they don't, must be able to direct them to the person who would be able to discuss it with them.
Perfect stuff. Okay, so next, Denise, is who is responsible for ensuring health and safety in an organization?
Right. So the simple question to that is absolutely everybody is
Yeah.
there to ensure health and safety. Employers have duties and employees have duties. Majority of employees don't even realise that they are duty bound under law under the Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act. However, as an employer, you are duty bound to inform the employee of their duties. If you do not engage with informing them of their duties, you cannot mitigate part responsibility to them, meaning if an accident happens, you can never argue the case that you informed, instructed, trained and supervised them. That's the first thing. But generally, health and safety would and should always come from the top down. So the manager, the business owner must be health and safety orientated, and it should filter down, because you will never find in a business that employees will put up their hands and say, here, can we have health and safety, please? It
Yeah.
has to come from the top down, but everybody has a responsibility and everybody has a duty.
Okay, brilliant stuff. So next we have, I think we kind of covered this in the webinar anyway, but what health and safety aspects will be covered in an inspection?
So as I said, safety statements, safety policy, they will look at the risk assessments that are attached to it. The main body of risk assessment that every business, regardless of how many employees that you have, come under what's called the General Application Regulations, 2007 amended 2019. And that's fire, heating, lighting, windows, doors, floors, violence, aggression, bullying, welfare facilities, pregnancy at work, young, vulnerable, video assessments, manual handling, to name a few. There are a few of the risk assessments that may be picked out. If you deal with chemicals or have chemicals on the business, they may want to see safety data sheets, and they will take them out. And then what they will also want to see is your training records of your employees. They will want to see inductions. Every employee by law must have an induction into the business, and there must be a record of it. They may want to see the manual handling training, video assessments if it's in an office. They will sporadically just pick something out and want to see that, and then they may want to have a walk around the premises, inspecting fire exits, inspecting your inspecting how you do your safe practices and what policies you've in play. And then they may take a few employees and discuss how health and safety has been communicated through the business, because what we find is a lot of businesses would only ever talk about health and safety when something has gone wrong. Health and safety should be the forefront of every be communicated at least once a month, whether it's to do with welfare, whether it's to do with mental health, whether it's to do with first aid provisions. As we say, every business should have a first aid box and every employee should know where that is. They may even ask for that. So basically, it's like dropping a penny into the ocean. You don't know where it will land.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The next question, Denise, is I think something that maybe not catches people out, but people aren't entirely clear on this, but you can shed some light on it. So I have 2 employees, 3 employees during peak times during the year. Do I need a safety statement or a safety policy?
Because you have 3 at one particular point throughout the year, you're required to have a safety statement in place. Once you go over the threshold of 3, that's not including the director. Senior managers are not included in that because they are your employees. So it's only the owner of the business who's not included in the number of 3. So once you have 3 people doing any service work, voluntary, subcontracting in the business, you must have a safety statement, unless you are a business of high risk that deals with chemicals, at which point you would be asked to have a safety statement in place.
Regardless. Lovely stuff.
Regardless.
Okay. And then the next one, in what circumstances should I inform my employees of changes to my policy?
Anytime there is any changes to your policies, you must inform your employees. As I said, it's a two-way conversation. You give them the information. They would open up and read, generally, if there's a change to the handbook or anything like that. If they do not come back and discuss it with you, you can take it that they have accepted what has been asked of them. However, again, this goes back down to your management system. How did you communicate? How did you know that they read it? And do they know within the policy that they have a duty and that they are allowed to report any hazard incidents or things that they're not happy with?
Perfect stuff. So there is a few more questions here, and I see a few people have popped some into the chat box there as well. But what we'll do is we reach out to everybody after the webinars for some feedback and to answer any unanswered questions. And as well, anybody who attended today's webinar, we offer you with a complimentary follow-up meeting or consultation, okay, to go over your health and safety, to answer any of your questions or concerns, okay. From the poll, we saw that 14% believed that your health and safety statement had to be updated every 2 years. So those 14%, it's probably worth having a chat with us after. We're more than happy to review your documentation, put forward some advice and recommendations for yourself, particularly now when we're coming up to Christmas. A lot of businesses get busier during the Christmas period. You're going to want to ensure that you are fully compliant with the Health and Safety at Work Act 2005. You're going to make sure that you're ticking all your boxes and that you're compliant. If you haven't had a look at your health and safety documentation this year, I'd say have a chat with us. Let us put forward some advice and recommendations for you. What I kind of say to people is, look, if something's not going to cost me anything and it'll benefit the business and it'll show that I'm ticking all my boxes, I'd be mad not to take it. So if you're interested in that, we'll reach out. There's also an option at the end here to kind of tick for a complimentary follow-up. We'd be more than happy to walk you through everything. Okay, that kind of wraps us up for today. Denise, thanks a million for joining us today. I think that was a very beneficial and informative kind of topic, and a topic that maybe some people aren't fully aware of their obligations. So I think we covered a lot of bases there. So look, thanks a million for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks a million.